All right, hello, welcome back. Um, so this will be the second video for your project, Excel project, and you'll really, or yeah, you'll really be given an Excel file like this, and it'll have a home price and down payment and whatnot, and you'll have and an interest rate, and you'll have to determine the basically you'll have to determine the the amortization table like I'm going to show here. So this is just following from the example in the previous video where I did it by hand. I did some amortization by hand. Now we're going to do the full loan. Okay, so again, there's a $210,000 home. A down payment of 20% is made. The bank charges the family an 8.4% interest rate, and it's a 15-year mortgage. Okay, so but because mortgage payments are made on a monthly basis, that means there's going to be 12 payments each year. So, and it's 15 years. That means there's going to be a total of 180 payments, right? And because it's over 180 months. Now, the initial equity, as we already saw in the previous video, is 20% of the home price, right? And that was 42,000. And then the mortgage, the amount borrowed, right, for the home is just whatever is left, the other 80%. So we can just subtract the initial equity from that and get it that way. And now, of course, because payments are made on a monthly basis, we need, when it comes to discounting and determining the payment, we need to use a monthly interest rate, the periodic interest rate, that is. So we'll take our annual interest rate up here. I'll do equal sign, take our annual interest rate up here and do slash divided by 12. And that means we have a 0.7% interest rate, as we saw. We might want to, yeah, 0.7. And then our monthly payment, and again, I'm going to put an equal negative sign in front of this just so I get a positive number. So I'll do PMT open parentheses. The rate is the periodic rate of 0.7% per month. Number of periods is the 180. Present value is our amount borrowed, 168, comma. No future value, and amortized loans are ordinary annuities, so we put a 0 for type. Right, and close parentheses, and like we saw in the previous video, there's a monthly payment of $1,644.53, right, paid each month to pay down this loan. Okay. Now, as I talked about in the previous video, we're assuming that you're borrowing it today at the beginning of June, and so your first payment's not going to be for another month, right? So, looking at the borrow date, what we'll do. That means the borrowing date is going to be June, so I'll do June 2023, and I should get something like that. Okay, and so that means because the first payment's due a month from the date it was borrowed, this due date here is going to be July 2023, or July 2023, like that. I'll get back to that in a second. So we know there's 180 payments, so starting here, this is where we're going to do our actual amortization schedule down here, okay? So I'm going to do equal sign, not equal sign, excuse me. I'll do the first payment, second payment, and then I want to have 180 rows, okay? So for each one of these 180 payments. So I'll go down until you should be able to see it there. It should kind of tell you. You scroll all the way down, that'll give you all the payments. The numbers for the payments, just payment number 1, payment number 2, payment number 10, all and such and so forth. Sorry. So the first payment is due on July 23rd, as we talked about, and then the next one, that means the next one's going to be due in August. The one after that's going to be, the third one's going to be due in September. The fourth one's going to be due in October, and so forth. So if I just, go back. If I just type in July 2023 and then take my cursor and put it in the lower right-hand corner like this, and then just double-click, then it should fill in the rest for me. Once you do the first column, you don't have to scroll, drag it all the way down like that. It'll figure it out. Okay, so our last payment, it looks like, is going to be made on June 2038. Okay. All right, so now we have our payment. The payment's going to be the same each year, right? That's what an amortized mortgage does, right? So what we'll do is we'll just take equal sign and payment. Now here's the thing though, what I want to do though is if I just do that and then just drag it down, then I'm going to get something like that. And that's because, Excel's thinking, oh, I need to move it down one. See, if I click this, I'm moving it down. In order to tell Excel not to do that, we'll put a dollar sign in between the D and, well, you don't actually have to put it between the D, but I'll go ahead and before the D. So we'll put a dollar sign before the D and in between the D and the 6, right? And then we'll repeat it. Then we'll get the same payment each month, right? All 186 payments of $1,644.53. Okay. Now we calculate our interest. Okay, so our monthly interest rate is, so I'll do 0 equals 0.007 times, well, whatever our balance is at before we make this first payment. And our balance on this first payment before we make this first payment is just how much we borrowed in total, which was $168,000. So I'll just put $168,000 there. And like we saw previously, that means the interest paid on the first payment is $1,176. And of course, if we take our payment and then subtract the interest paid, so I'll go to here, I'll do equal sign, click the payment corresponding to that period, do minus, and then click the interest paid for that one. And that means, as we saw before, we got $468.53 in principal paid. So we started off with a balance of $168,000. After this payment, we should end with $168,000 less $468.53. So it's going to be $168,000 minus this. Okay. So that's our ending balance, as we saw before, is $167,531.47. Now equity. This is something we didn't really talk about in the previous one because I just didn't have room. But equity is just how much our equity will rise. Remember, after the first payment, right? So our equity is going to rise because we paid down some principal. Remember, our equity started off as $42,000, right? So if we just click $42,000. And our equity rose by the amount of principal we paid. So because we paid $468.53 in principal, our equity is going to rise with that. So that after this first payment, our equity is now slightly higher. It's $42,468.53. Okay. Now, you don't want to click and drag after this first one. You want to do it on the second one, and largely because of certain, unless you want to get, caught in some trouble. I guess yeah. I'll show why in a second. But so let's go ahead and do the interest for the second one. So for the second payment on August 2023, now the ending balance has fallen, so we need to assess interest on this new balance of $167,531.47. So 0.007 times this equals $1,172.72. Okay, like we saw before. And then equal, we take our payment and then we subtract the interest, and that means $471.81 in principal was paid. Okay. And now the ending balance is, of course, just the previous balance. This is really why, because we want to actually change. We want to start the iteration on the second row. Now we just take the ending balance, right, that from the row above it, and then we subtract the principal paid. And that means, of course, now after the second payment, the ending balance has fallen to $167,059.66. And then finally, our equity is just the previous equity, right, plus whatever principal was paid on the second payment. Okay, now its equity has risen to $42,940.34. Now, what I can do is I can highlight all of this, right, and then take the cursor and put it in the lower right-hand corner and just double-click it. And then that'll repeat all the calculations, follow that same iteration as it did before. Ignore that, right? Just let me expand this. It's probably okay. And a few things. What you'll notice is that this column J, which has the ending balance, if you've done everything right, this column J should have 0 in it, right? Now there might be a little rounding errors depending on how you do it, but like it might be off or plus or not minus by like 10 cents or something like that. But by and large, it should be 0. And you should also notice that your equity, by the time that you've made the last payment, should be $210,000. Now this equity thing assumes that the price of the house hasn't changed over this entire period. It's not a good assumption, but basically your equity should be, close to the original home price, but your ending balance after the 180th or after the last payment should be $0. And what you'll notice is that the interest component rather of each payment falls as more and more payments are made. At the same time, the principal component rises, right? And that's because after each payment, the ending balance falls a little bit, and thus the interest assessed on that principal is lower and lower. Okay, prior, or indicated prior, I should say. So I'm just going to try to expand this, right? So let's do a few things. I want to just do some. First thing, let's create a title. Let's title this chart. We have a legend at the bottom, so I'll just call this amortization schedule, right? And I'll call it monthly payment decomposition. Basically, I'm decomposing, that is to say, the word decomposition is, in this sense, means that I'm decomposing this monthly payment into, an interest rate component or an interest component and a principal component. Okay, so click that. Let's just go to home. I might increase the size of that a little bit, maybe make it bold, something like that. Okay, now we also kind of want to maybe probably have a little bit more, a few more dates. So I'm going to cut this down to, I think 250. So under units here, so I'll go back and show you what I did. But what I did was I basically double click here. Let me go back a second. Or close to being equal, right? Beyond this date, beyond this, April 30th or so, right? The interest component is going to be a smaller share of the total payment, while the principal component will be a larger share. Before this date, as you can see over here, the interest payment is going to be a larger component. It's going to be the majority of it, while the principal component is going to be the minority, right? And so if I just do a double click right there and do a data label there, we can kind of go ahead and see the we can kind of go ahead and see where we start, and then of course by the end, by you can see right here by November 2036, if you can see that number there, by November 2036, principal is going to be 1,430, but interest is only going to be, $214, right? Okay. All right, so that's kind of what you're expected to do, looking to do on this project. You're going to do the amortization table, then you're going to create this graph that I've brought up here. All right. Okay, so I'll do it for this one. Have a good one. Bye.